for those who are politically wise, a show about the lives of Christians in Ohio involved with politics. Introducing your host, Reverend Thomas Wise.
Greetings, my fellow patriots, saints, and sinners. The show is titled Politically Wise, and I am your host, Reverend Thomas Wise. At the end of the show, there will be a blessing. Don't miss it. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Next time you're thinking about beating the train, think again. It takes a typical freight train traveling 50 miles an hour, 1.5 miles to stop. That's nearly 18 football fields. Don't try to beat the train. Ohio's roads can be highways or dieways. The choice is yours. A message from Operation Lifesaver and this station.
The opinions and statements on this show belong to those who give them. The rest of the show belongs to Thomas Wise Words, all rights reserved. The show is titled Politically Wise, and I am your host, Reverend Thomas Wise. Hello, my listeners. This is Reverend Thomas Wise. The show is called Politically Wise. I am sitting here at the Ohio State House with Representative Bill Patmon and Representative Timothy Derickson. Guys, tell my listeners a little bit about yourselves.
Well, I guess since I was mentioned first, I got to go first.
You're the senior man here.
Well, I have been blessed to have a chance to do policy for people. And there was one thing that I always thought about and prayed about, is that I wanted to be some value to the human fabric and have some, so when I look back over my shoulder as time went on, that I would be able to say, I helped somebody, I changed some things, or through God's empowering me, that things are different because I lived on this earth, and some people were better off for knowing me and better off for living under something that I might have a part in. A footnote in history. That kind of is how I feel and how I look back, and that's really kind of about Bill Patton. If you would say what brings me to the table on religious issues is that I've never believed in the separation of God and man. Most folks talk about separation of church and state, but what is the state? What is the church? We are all human beings under God's authority, so I've never bought into the whole idea of separation, and so I am probably different in that way.
Well, I think I'm here to be inspired by Representative Patman's words. No, I came to the State House 5 years ago, and I bring with me a sincere faith in our God. And my ministry at home is not unlike my ministry here in Columbus. And what my hope is to why I'm here, much like Representative Patman, is to encourage those around me to be here to represent not only their constituency, but to their Maker. I think we're here, we're called here for a reason. I think we all have gifts that we're expected to use. And if the gift is indeed one of ministry, shame on us for not utilizing that gift while we're here in the role that we are in determining public policy. So I see a real partnership with policy and our religious beliefs.
Representative Patman, you are from what part of Ohio?
Cleveland, Ohio, actually, and I got to talking about my faith, and I probably should say that I was 12-year Cleveland City Councilman, Chairman of Finance, Minority Whip, just a myriad of things that I've done over the years. A member of the Regional Transit Authority for a few years in Cleveland, and got to state politics by having lost in a mayor's race. And I was praying about it and thanking God for the things that He allowed me to do. That to meet presidents, to stand on the tarmac with most powerful people in the world, and to be noticed and recognized, and it's a very freeing thing. It was for me over the years, and I was being thankful for it. And I says it's been a good ride. And at that moment, I was kind of touched, if you will, and an epiphany, if you believe. Try again, the voice said. And so, after a pretty good whipping in a mayor's race, about 3 months later, I filed in the primary for state representative and won. And that in itself is, for me, just a moment, because one of my favorite prayers actually spoke to that. And on the night of me winning, it was so applicable. Okay? And I don't know if you have time for all of it.
Tell us. Now we're all curious.
Well, my favorite prayer is the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. Maketh. That's stunning for me. He leads me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. The night of the election, because I can comment on each verse, but the night of the election, I was really nervous. Even though my faith, the will of the people, I'm really nervous. I'm kind of, and if you have any experience in politics, a lot of times the candidate disappears. Well, he disappears because it's difficult for him to just sit there and watch people and make conversation and so forth. So you need some time alone. And I did that. And I went up to the lake at 55th. And I'm sitting in the car. And everybody's kind of looking for me. My phone's going off. And I'm sitting there in the car. And I look at the lake. And it's still. It's glass still. And I just said, by the still waters. By the time they caught up with me, because they found me, I said, I know I won. You don't have to tell me. I know I won. Okay. And that moment in my life was probably the moment that is kind of irrevocable, when people start talking about, I don't know, and I'm trying to figure it out. I know, unequivocally, of his presence and his leadings. So that's my favorite prayer. Prayed it on that night, and then saw it demonstrated right before me.
Wow. Tim, that's a tough act to follow, but tell us where you represent it. You know?
Background?
Yeah.
For me, I was raised a farmer. My family and generations past have been farmers, and so I kind of fit in the farmer box, if there is one. Fairly conservative approach to life. Have started a couple businesses along the way back home. Didn't really grow up in a very political or partisan family. As a matter of fact, we simply were not engaged in political legislation, policy endeavors. Although I did find myself, I ran for township trustee, which I served in for 9 years, and the township is a rather rural one, and I really enjoyed being a township trustee. It was comfortable for me, having grown up in that township. We all kind of know one another in that township, so we were somewhat friends, although some of the issues that we voted on didn't always bring people together. But there weren't that many controversial issues, frankly, to begin with. But because of term limits, my state representative, Sean Webster at the time, encouraged me to consider this, because I had been serving in the township role for some time. So put my hat in the ring, and with God's blessings, found my way here as well as state representative. Not exactly something that I had planned or aspired for, but here I am. And it's an interesting place to be. When you come here and you're a little naive or green to the political or the partisan process, often that's a little discouraging. And I recall that being my most what I was most discouraged about is just how partisan things operated here. But you know, over time, when you find people like Representative Patmon, and I worked with Representative Mallory on my first bill, and although we didn't get it done the first General Assembly that I was here, we did the second. And I certainly find much reward in working with members of the other party when we can identify a problem, even though we may be coming from different directions. When we identify a problem and we work to solve it, and in the end we help people along the way, that's good government. And I'm very proud to have accomplished some of the things that we have, and I'm very honored and proud to have Representative Patmon as a partner in legislation that we're working on now.
And we will be right back after the break.
To some people, they're just a pet, a dog or a cat. But to you, they're part of your family. They've shared your lives, provided companionship, and given unconditional love. And just like when a human family member passes on, you want your four-legged family members to be treated with dignity. Baker, Hazel, and Snyder Funeral Home and Crematory has been caring for families since 1941 and now offers the same level of service for your pets at Snyder Pet Crematory. Call 274-1151, 274-1151.
The show is titled Politically Wise, and I am your host, Reverend Thomas Wise.
Now,
speaking of that partnership, I think that partnership has yielded something called the Religious Liberty Caucus.
it has. It has. There are a number of states who are forming caucuses that simply provide an arena to discuss religious issues. When I first started here in the 128th General Assembly, the Speaker of the House was Armand Budish. And the Speaker at that time had a standing House committee that addressed religious issues. Faith-based and community initiatives is what that particular committee was called. Well, we no longer have that standing House committee, so we really don't have a forum that is inviting to discuss religious issues until Representative Patmon and I got together and had lots of input prior to forming this religious caucus. But now we have formed this caucus. We've met a couple times. They've been very informative, fruitful meetings. And it's just nice to have a place that you feel welcomed to discuss these particular issues.
There's and I've had the eye-opening experience of studying the Constitution for a bit here lately. And it's stunning how interwoven God, heaven, and Christianity is in the Founding Fathers' description of what they were trying to accomplish. I was struck by one phrase. Publius said that we asked the patronage of heaven in trying to figure out how to form a government that would not have factions or persons, both minority or majority, that would prevent the execution of a place that had these freedoms and these just an enormous opportunities that we have in this country. And I'm always, every time I run across something that basically solidifies my belief that God's hand in the making of it, God's hand in the success of it, and God's hand in saying, oh, you need to calm down, that I'm in charge, not you. And so we get some whippings and some blessings in this country, but there is no doubt in my mind that this is a Christian nation formed by a bunch of Christians. And so each time I run across something like that, I kind of am buoyed by it. And just recently read that, and I think it was Federalist 47 or 51. Memory as we get on, but one of the two. And that statement really struck me.
Some of my readers would know that exactly where that's at. Most probably would not. But that's incredible that, that the We have that. God's hand is in all things.
All things.
All things. God's hand is in all things. But so you've gone and you put feet to this cause now. For you, how many times you met?
Twice.
Twice
now.
What kind of fruit or what kind of testimony have you seen from other people? Were you surprised by anybody that showed up at the meeting, or surprised by the got conflict, got hassled for it, or anything like that type of? Religious liberties is under attack in this country. Mm-hmm. Have you gotten to receive any of that kind of harassment, or?
I have not received any harassment, nor has any of the other members that I know of that have attended. It's been the time has been very encouraging in our meetings. What we have discussed are initiatives from colleagues here in the House that would be pertaining to religious freedoms. Bills. Representative McLean had a bill that we discussed, as did Representative Hayes. Had a couple bills now that we've discussed in committee, and it's really just it's a forum to bounce off ideas, thoughts, feedback from men and women of faith. And so it's really been a good, encouraging forum there. Again, I have not experienced anything outside of that caucus that's been negative toward it in any way.
But some surprises.
Really?
Yes. You really don't get a sense of who you're sitting next to until you attend something like that. Mm-hmm. And it just goes back to the adage that we are more alike than we are different. And so when you see a very, how can I say, vocal conservative member walk through the door and you're kind of sitting there, it's okay. And so, although it's a surprise, it's a pleasant surprise, because I believe that some of everybody is saved, and this caucus has proved that to me, unequivocally. Mm-hmm. So that's a surprise. It's a pleasant surprise.
Mm-hmm. The show is titled Politically Wise, and I am your host, Reverend Thomas Wise. Do you pray for a politician? Do you think a politician can be a Christian? Do you think a politician should stand up for Christian principles? Do you think politicians should pray together? Do you want to see more Christians in politics? If you said yes to any of these questions, please join the Ohio Prayer Caucus Network. Find the Ohio Prayer Caucus Network on Facebook. Welcome back to Politically Wise. If you want to email me, you may do so at politically.wise@gmail.com. Please like us on our Facebook page, Politically Wise.
An idea, how do you form a caucus? And particularly, what do you have to do here? Do you have to stand around and, shed blood, or,
Well, I can tell you what we did, and we've kind of called ourselves a religious forum, to a place to come talk. We might call it a caucus as well, but in the 128th General Assembly when we started, there were a few of us that wanted to start a prayer group, which we did, and we get together and pray on Wednesday mornings, and it's a time to look forward to for those who attend, and there are a number of folks, Tom, like yourself, who attend that, and it's an encouraging time. But it really kind of spawned from that we could go beyond a time of prayer and talk about policy as well, and that's really kind of what we've done. It's a very similar group to our Wednesday morning prayer group, although this group is certainly open to all. Regardless of your political persuasion and where in the state you call home, has absolutely nothing to do with this caucus or with the prayer group that we formed. It is very inviting to all who would like to participate and contribute. So it was rather loose, you might say, in the forming of this particular group, but I do think it's very important to the point where there are other caucuses and forums like this forming around the country, because we do see a need to discuss religious-related issues, and we've certainly listened and heard. We recognize that there are threats upon our freedoms that need to be discussed throughout the states, and this is a nice place to be able to talk about those threats.
So, going forward, what kind of fruit will this start to bear? So there's a number of bills coming forth,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to put together, probably put out a bill. What is you see the biggest attack here in Ohio on our religious liberties?
Well, it goes back to the separation of church and state, and the overwhelming fight starts with that phrase, and that no state money should be spent, but careful about that. You can't pray in school. Just ridiculous stuff. You can't have religious artifacts or demonstrations. The manger is prohibited. I mean, just crazy stuff. But that's the kind of stuff that you're dealing with, and it keeps going. But the good sense of it, at least in my opinion, Tim and myself, is that can't you see the parallel between the lack of integrity in a lot of our society and the lack of religious understanding, learning, and belonging? Can't you see the parallel lines? As we go down one, we also go down the other. Why is it that someone who is got more money than they can ever use think that the old idea is using whatever means necessary to steal somebody else's? Well, you're way out of line from what we teach and what we know about our relationship with God. And so we're struggling in this country with the whole idea of ethics and integrity because we keep turning out scholars. They're smarter than the ones before. They're more technologically advanced than the ones before. And they do more damage. I just think it's time we went in the other direction. And maybe we can get that line to start traveling towards heroes, integrity, fairness, and the things this country was built on.
Yeah, our prisons are full, getting fuller. And because of moral decline in our society.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So we've decided together that we might look a little different, but we believe in the same God. And we believe that he has a place in everything we do. And how we can figure out how to do that while taking on the powers, if you will. We're going to do that. And that's what I love about Tim. And he kind of grins when he sees me coming because he knows that there is no back down when it comes to that.
Amen. You're a strong man.
Well, thank you.
Bill and I are working on a bill now that will address our religious freedoms. Back in '93, Congress drafted and President Clinton signed the Religious Freedom Restoration Act that dictated how the courts would handle religious freedom cases. That act has since been ruled, although it's enforceable on the federal level, it's not on the state level. And there are a number of states, 17 of them to be exact, who have passed their own Religious Freedom Act or one similar to what was passed in D.C. So Bill and I are working on that particular legislation now, and we do hope to have it put together, and we'll present that hopefully before the month's out. There are many cases that we've recognized that are simply our threats throughout the country, that are threats to our religious freedoms, and we really want to protect Ohio's freedoms.
Well, gentlemen, I thank you for sitting down with me. Is there anything that I haven't thought to ask that you guys had that we wanted to highlight during this interview?
Tom, you've been very thorough. Thank you for giving me and Representative Patmon both some time to express our heart.
Could you? One thing we didn't talk about is, in Claire, what district you represents and what committees you sit on. So you could,
Sure.
Bill, go ahead.
I represent District 10, which is downtown Cleveland and the lakefront along the east side. And so most of my district, with the exception of Bracknell, is in the city of Cleveland. So the urban problems are really something that I face on a daily basis. The committees I sit on is Ways and Means. I sit on state government and transportation and homeland security. Those are my 3 committees.
Yes. All right.
My district is the 53rd district, which is in southwest Ohio, Butler County in particular. The committees that I sit on are finance, education, and workforce development.
Yeah. But you're both family men, got children?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 4 children and 7 grandchildren.
7 grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
2 kids for me, and I'm not quite prepared for the grandchildren, or grandfather title, put it that way. But I look forward to that day.
Get ready, get ready.
All right. There's one issue that came up here lately about religious liberty was the Holocaust Memorial. Would that be something your caucus would deal with? Or is that something that's just...
Well, we would talk about it.
We would talk about it.
I don't necessarily think we would probably enter the fray on either side, but definitely something we would discuss.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That would be an appropriate place to have that discussion.
That would be an appropriate place to have this discussion.
Yeah.
All right. Well, gentlemen, again, thank you for your time. I'm Reverend Thomas Wise, and the show is called Politically Wise. I'm sitting here interviewing Representative Bill Patmon and Representative Timothy Derickson in their office here at the State House. Thank you.
The show is titled Politically Wise, and I am your host, Reverend Thomas Wise. Thank you for listening today. If you want to email me, you may do so at politically.wise@gmail.com. Please like us on our Facebook page, Politically Wise. Now, here's your blessing. Blessings based on Psalms 107, verse 8. May you know God's blessing as you give him thanks for his unfailing love. May God allow you to see his wonderful deeds. May God satisfy you with good things.